Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the topic, Is GitHub Copilot Worth It? Real data provides the answer. My name is Naomi Lurie. I head up product marketing at Faros AI, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we begin, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to join us. This webinar is being recorded, and you will be receiving a link to the recording in a few days. We have two fantastic speakers lined up who will share their expertise and field your questions during the Q&A portion. I'm just going to start by introducing the topic and then tell you about our speakers and their presentations today. We all know that AI is poised to revolutionize software engineering in unprecedented ways. Suddenly, there's this huge supply of magical capabilities that were previously not possible, and their rapid evolution will transform the discipline very quickly. The first frontier is AI-based coding assistance. In Bain's recent research with software companies, 57% of engineering teams said that they are deploying coding assistance for software development, and 75% of executives said it's met or exceeded their expectations. So I imagine that many of you attending today are trying to answer questions for yourself about GitHub Copilot evaluation, rollout, and ROI at your organization. For those of you in leadership positions, you're undoubtedly preparing your strategy, your roadmap, your presentations to your executive leadership and your board on this very topic. And for that, you need data and insight into how you can leverage the benefits that Copilot will unleash. And that's the discussion that we're going to have today. Our first speaker is Thomas Gerber. Thomas is the field CTO at Faros AI. Faros AI is a leading software engineering intelligence platform. That means it's a platform that provides visibility and insight into all aspects of engineering productivity, operations, and outcomes. Faros AI was founded and built by the engineering team behind Einstein, the Salesforce AI and machine learning platform. The team's world-class AI and software engineering expertise makes it a perfect partner to be discussing the transformational capabilities of AI coding assistance with a premier vendor in the space, GitHub. So Thomas is a software engineering leader with 15 years of experience in SaaS, cloud computing, distributed systems, and data and AI and machine learning platforms. Thomas worked with Faros' founders at Salesforce, where he was in charge of the Einstein AI data lake. Thomas is going to talk about Faros' own data-driven evaluation of GitHub Copilot, which became the prototype for our collaboration with Matt Gunter at GitHub to co-design a reusable, robust model for measuring the time savings from Copilot and harnessing the benefits with intentionality in large-scale deployments. So Matt Gunter leads GitHub's business value engineering program, which draws on insights from systems engineering, process improvement, and software quality. Throughout his career, he has served in customer-facing roles at industry-leading organizations such as BEA, Oracle, and Pivotal. And at GitHub, he collaborates with customers and prospects to assess and clarify the impact of GitHub's products on their development processes. His efforts create improved understanding of a variety of customer stakeholders involved in deciding to adopt GitHub products. And this work is also leading to innovations in how software-related process improvement can use a value lens to better target and guide outcomes. So there will be time for you to ask questions of our speakers. So please, while you're listening to Thomas and Matt, submit your questions in the Q&A box, and I'll ask them on your behalf towards the end. For Thomas and Matt to get to know you just a little bit, let's see who we have on today's call and what your experience has been with Copilot so far. So Mahesh, can we please launch the first poll? All right, so as you guys can see, we have launched a poll asking, how would you describe your organization's experience with GitHub Copilot? Are you just looking into it, but haven't started using it yet? Or maybe you have just a few people kind of playing around with it, but it's nothing structured. Or maybe you're in the midst of a proper substantial evaluation of it. Or maybe your organization has just gone for it. You know, the full org is enabled and anyone who wants it is using it. So why don't you put in your answers over there, and we'll give it a few seconds. You could contemplate this question, and then we'll take a quick look at the answers together. Let's give it 10 more seconds because it's an easy question. All right, Mahesh, if you feel like we have enough answers, let's see. Okay. So the poll results. Let's see what you guys are doing. We've got 5% who are looking into it but haven't started using it yet. So really the majority is definitely doing something. 32% are playing around with it. 36% are in the midst of a substantial evaluation. And 27% have the full organization enabled. And anyone who wants to use it is using it. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was great. All right, so Thomas and Matt, now you know who you're talking to. So Thomas, I am going to kick over to you to start to tell us about your approach to GitHub Copilot adoption at Faros AI.
Yeah, thank you, Naomi. And what a time to be alive. So I'm going to do three things today. I'm going to briefly describe in a bit more detail what Faros is and how it does what it does. Then I'm going to tell you about our own journey with Copilot and how we use Faros to figure out how Copilot was affecting our software engineering organization. And then I'm going to talk to how we use this adventure and how we generalized it to help all of our customers figure out their own journey, their own transformation that is being brought by AI in general and Copilot in particular. So let's start with the first point. What is Faros? As Naomi said, we're a software engineering intelligence platform. And the way we do what we do is, as you see on the architecture slide, I think unique. And that is, we collect data from all the systems your engineers use, from your Jira, your GitHub, your CI/CD toolchain, your org, your HR systems, your incident management system, and so forth, right? The whole software development lifecycle toolchain. And that data is automatically mapped to our main IP, which is our data models. So we've done the work to model all the things that engineers do, from PRs, tasks, incidents, artifacts, deployments, teams. Like all of those concepts have been modeled and they relate to each other. And we do the work to just put all of the data onto that model. And then around it, and this is the platform that you see in the middle, we provide as many ways as possible to leverage and exploit that data, whether through connector development kits to help you add even more data to Faros. If you have homegrown systems, we have a full API layers to query the data. We have a full BI layer that lets you visualize the data. We have a full automation layer. And we have ways to ship the data into other systems for even more usage. And then we added all the administration and security that's needed, like role-based access control and so forth, to make the data safe. So that's the middle layer. And then the top layer, we've also done the research to get you started on the most frequent use cases. That is productivity, DevOps, teams health, quality. We're adding more use cases every month, such as cost capitalization, FinOps, and the one we're talking about today, which is essentially helping you navigate the waters around AI. Our ethos is really flexibility. And before I go to my next topic, I just want to highlight the difference between what you may have seen with metrics vendors out there, which is, again, we don't focus on the metric, we focus on the data. Metrics is an obvious thing that you can do with the data, but it's important for those metrics to be fully customizable and imbued with your idiosyncrasies and your context, right? This is why we believe that data is much more superior than just metrics. Some of you may already be there and therefore may have started building something like Faros internally. Great. I understand. We were there as well in our, at Salesforce. And I would say the way you can think about Faros then is Faros does all the undifferentiated bits that are the same for every single person on this call. Connector to Jira, that's not differentiated, right? It's the same for everyone. The data model that explains what a task is and what a PR is and how they relate, this is not differentiated. Basic research on DevOps and productivity, that's not differentiated. And those are all the bits that we're doing so that we focus on the 80% that is the same for everyone. And then you do the last mile that's very specific to you, as mentioned earlier. So our ethos is really on flexibility. That's first in a nutshell. And now, Naomi, I'm going to move to my second section, which is really about describing how we approached GitHub Copilot internally and how we use Faros at Faros, right? So obviously we dog food, great. We are small still compared to a lot of you. And we optimize, for things that are very specific to startup, namely speed. And so I will walk you through our journey, but please don't necessarily focus on what we learned about Copilot because it's obviously very specific to where we are in our journey. What I would like to point out, though, is that how we thought about it, how we were able to find it in the data, and how the tool allowed us to really very quickly get to answers backed by data. So for context, we started a pilot with a third of our engineering in May with GitHub Copilot. And so what I decided to do when it came time to figure out whether or not we would buy Copilot for everyone, what I decided to do is to chart a few metrics and break it down by cohort, the cohort that was doing the pilot with Copilot and the cohort that was not. And so when you look at most of the graph here, the last 3 bars is really, the pilot time, I would say. And so because my BI layer is a full BI layer, it was pretty easy for me to just pick from our libraries of chart and metrics, a metrics that I wanted to look at and just inject the data about who is in the cohort augmented and not augmented and just break down through that dimension. So I started by looking at volume of PR, right? Pretty basic stuff. And here we see that, by the end of the pilot, the 1/3 of engineering that was augmented by Copilot actually was doing more PRs than the 2/3 that were not. I also checked the PR size. It remained constant and the same across. So I didn't include it here in this dashboard. But then I looked at merge time. How quickly were those PRs merged into our main branch? And here, there was a clear-cut before and after picture. Like, look, the PRs that were created with the help of Copilot merged twice as fast as those who weren't. So very interesting signal. And I can almost feel the gears turning in some of your heads. And, the immediate next question is like, okay, well, the PR got merged faster, but does it mean that you shipped code faster to production? Does it mean that the code that shipped in production was of lesser quality or the same quality? Great questions. So this is where I went next. I started by looking at change failure rate. It remained stable for us, so I just didn't include it there. It was not differentiated. And I then looked at lead time, the full lead time, not just what happened in the PR, but like how is the code moving from, the main branch to a dev environment and then to production. We have those metrics in Faros because we have all the deployment information, and Faros does all the work to connect your, trace the code, I would say, across your various systems. And here, well, again, we knew that the time for the first review would be a lot faster for the augmented cohort, 0.3 days versus 2 days. But the real surprise was really like time spent in dev. the code that was augmented by Copilot for us spent a lot less time in our dev environment compared to the code that wasn't. Very interesting. And it seems like that's a very good signal for us. It means we ship code faster. I still try to, assess like, is there a catch? Where is the catch? And so I looked at survey data that we collect, also stored in Faros. And some of the comments seem to hint at code quality. And so I looked at our code quality data from Faros, and yes, there it was. It seems like the Copilot cohort was essentially having more code coverage. And that was consistent with comments saying like, hey, look, GitHub Copilot is very good at writing unit tests. It also, interestingly enough, we noticed that the code smells went up slightly, not a lot, but slightly. And it seems like SonarQube detected that there was some code duplication happening for the code written by Copilot. So, there's nothing, the lunch was not completely free. But look, in 30 minutes, and this is, I think, the important point, in 30 minutes, I was able to get to a decision that was backed by data. In this case, it was clear cut for us. Yes, we should spend 10K or 15K per year giving Copilot to everyone. The downstream effects of it are clear. And for now, we should just go with it, right? Obviously, that's very specific to our size, where we are in our life cycle. And, that's why 30 minutes was sufficient. But then we thought, okay, look, every company out there is a software company now, every large company at least, right? And AI is transforming every software engineering organization, or will very soon. So how can we help? How can we take something similar than this and give it to our customers so they can navigate those waters? And it's not just about Copilot, and it's not like just Copilot ROI. That's a very small portion. What we needed to figure out, and this is where our collaboration with our early adopters and with Matt here, we needed to figure out a framework, and Matt will go into detail, a framework on how to think about those things. And then we had to figure out how to measure what the framework required. And this is where Faros and the flexibility that it provides came in handy. And before passing the baton, I will leave you with this. Look, Copilot and other features that GitHub will be releasing soon at GitHub Universe in 2 weeks, they are saving time for your ICs. The question that I think every leader ought to answer is how much time? And I think that depends on what you do, what your industry is, what your practices are. But you ought to have an answer as to what is this potential energy that is being created by those tools through those time save. The second thing I think you need to figure out is, left to their own devices, what are your ICs doing with that extra energy? They're not all going to optimize like us for speed, right? Because you're a large organization, you optimize for other things. Some of them, and it might not be even uniform within your organization. It might, some of your folks may optimize for speed, some others for quality, some others for satisfactions, refactoring, some of them maybe for other things as well, right? You need to figure that out, I think, because if you figure those two things out, the time, the potential energy, and where people tend to, how people tend to optimize locally and how that moves the needle locally, then I think what you can do, which is the most valuable thing, is you can figure out how much you can harness, how much energy you can harness towards a global optimization, right? That ties to your whole organization and to your business, and being intentional about focusing that energy. And whatever that is, I think, again, you need a framework to think about those things, and you need data to measure, to choose, and to track. And I think that's a good place to now switch to Matt.
Awesome. Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, we can, let's see if I can make that clear on my side. Is it fitting? Yeah, okay. You can go to the next slide. First of all, thanks, Naomi, for that introduction, and Thomas. It's quite a good overview of Faros there. So where I want to start is with how difficult the problem of understanding Copilot, understanding the impact Copilot is going to have, planning for that impact, and guiding that impact. This is the area that I work in every day with our customers who are going through Copilot evaluations. And this experience of working with them actually has led to this collaboration with Faros. So let me just start with what's on the slide here. So there, for Copilot, it's still, a very new technology. Some developers are using it as a pair programmer. That's like as a sounding board or as a way to critique their code or to come up with some alternative options. Some are using it as an expert system to implement code in ways that they are, that is above their level, for example. Another area is as a code translator. So if you're working in a language you're not familiar with or working with someone else's code that you're not as familiar with, Copilot can give you insight very quickly into the purpose and intent of that code. Others are using it more as a faster keyboard. The test creation that Thomas talked about is a great example of something that everyone knows how to do it, but it usually takes time that they don't want to spend. So having Copilot there allows them to write tests that they otherwise wouldn't be writing. So next slide. And so all of these sources of time savings can lead to a large range, and this is a partial list. There's plenty more of outcomes that Copilot can drive than is listed here. But instead of focusing on measuring all of these capabilities, we are working with customers to focus on measuring faster dev task completion. That is the area that research confirms Copilot and tools like Copilot can have impact. It's also an area that customers are having success during evaluation timeframes. A lot of these other impacts will only happen after some period of time goes by. And we tend to not want evaluations to stretch on so long. So faster dev task completion is really a key area to focus on, both for evaluation and to manage adoption. Next slide, Thomas. I hope everyone can see that slide okay. It looks a little cut off for me. Thomas, are you able to see the whole slide?
I see it okay too, Matt.
Okay, must just be me. No big deal. So what we have here are 3 of the models that we use as part of our business value engineering program for different types of improvements that GitHub is having with our customers. We can look at efficiency through a value stream mapping lens, and this is where we can quantify the delay, cost, and risk that exist in a process or task today, and then how much is that being reduced in an improved state on the right here. Now, what we see in the middle is the developer's view of this, or the engineer's view, where if you're working on a less efficient process, your little blue pie slice of productive time is smaller, whereas if you're working in a more efficient process, that pie slice is larger. And so this is the first place that GitHub Copilot impacts an organization. It gives time back to developers. You saw Thomas's chart there from Faros's evaluation showing that the time spent in dev was about half of what for the Copilot group than it was for the other group. These are typical time savings that we are seeing, and giving all of that time back to developers is a very powerful benefit. However, most organizations need to go beyond time saved in terms of their justification for purchasing Copilot. And so we have to drop down to the structural layer where we can take that time and spend it to go faster. That's the DORA mindset. Or we can spend it in ways that does not affect the frequency of change. Things like modularity, things like testing, things like improving onboarding, housekeeping for a repository or an environment. All of these things can be very valuable uses of time, but they're not necessarily going to show up in terms of frequency of change. So next slide, Thomas. So Thomas had brought up this concept of a reservoir of energy. And this is another version of that thought and that metaphor. So every developer that adopts Copilot has to go through a cascade shown here. They have to adopt, they have to learn to use Copilot, learn to optimize their prompt engineering and so forth. And they have to have the habit of using it on a regular basis. This tends, this leads to time savings and consistent time savings. So not just a one-time thing, but a rather consistent flow of time savings from using the tool. And this then has to be spent downstream to impact speed, quality, or team health, or engineer happiness, whatever the goal of the individual, the team, or the organization is. And so this is really the area where we wanted to reach out to Faros and Thomas and collaborate on a dashboard that helped show this cascade more clearly, and also help show these cohorts, these self-selected cohorts that have shared intentions around these particular outcomes, so that we're able to get very strong signals, very clear signals, and not just a bunch of noise, because it's very easy in these DevOps environments for the data just to become very noisy. There's very many variabilities, very many disruptions. So we're trying to minimize that with this approach. So at this point, Thomas, can we go and take a look at the new dashboard that we're collaborating on?
Yes. And where is my, here, sorry, just a second, going out of presentation mode. There we go. And I'm going to reshare now. And here we go.
Okay, so one of the things that was missing from the dashboard that Thomas shared earlier was, what was the organizational objective for Copilot? We recommend and use with our customers a Copilot value calculator to predict what level of benefit the organization can receive kind of as a stretch goal, what's a moderate expectation, what's a conservative expectation. And so with this type of modeling, we can create a dashboard that shows where the organization is trying to get to in terms of goal, like how many developers need to be adopting Copilot. And given that adoption expectation, what is the time savings expectation? If they're going to save 10% per dev hour, 20% per dev hour, what would be the maximum time savings possible? And then where are we at in terms of a run rate? So that's the middle progress indicator. And then over on the right, we translate that to economic benefit terms. And this is just to put it in terms that are more comparable to other decisions in the organization, and that are more familiar to executives and management, so that we can clearly articulate the value that Copilot is having and the potential that it could have. So scrolling down from there, we get into more of an operational view here, where we're looking at adoption, and how adoption is changing over time, how usage is changing over time, and then where the time savings is coming from. And so this is very much a detailed view of the cascade that I showed in my slide, where if we are having trouble with getting time savings, we can look at activity. Is the activity where it needs to be? And we could even go all the way back to adoption. Maybe adoption isn't where it needs to be. And so by looking at it in this way, we have a decision tree at our fingertips to know how to improve the outcome, at least in terms of time savings.
And if I may just interject very quickly, all of that is
Sure.
a BI layer, right? Which, to emphasize the point that what Matt was doing, you can drill into the data, you can bring in other data that, is relevant to that conversation. The dashboard that you see here is essentially a starter, but the goal is, and it provides you with a nice framework, but the tool is flexible enough to meet you where you are and bring your own idiosyncrasies into the mix.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Thomas. And so now we can look at velocity impact overall, but again, as Thomas was pointing out, velocity is an option. It's not a necessary consequence of time savings, right? So by looking at velocity overall, it's interesting, perhaps, but we really need to look at velocity more closely where teams and individuals are trying to improve velocity. So we obviously have developer sentiment down here as well, but whenever you're ready, Thomas, we can flip over to the drill down dashboard. Yeah, and so this dashboard is where we are capturing that intention of the cohort, whether they're focused on velocity, quality, or team health. And so we're filtering out all of the noise, if you will, which could be activity not focused on quality or not focused on velocity, depending on which cohort you're looking at here. And the goal of doing this is to get a clearer signal. Is the time savings that Copilot is providing helping people who are focusing on quality improve quality? And is it helping those focused on health and progress improving the health and progress of their team? And so we think this is going to be quite a significant improvement over what we're seeing most organizations doing with something like Dora metrics or even just sentiment surveys. So yeah, we look forward to having this in a couple of weeks. I think definitely by Universe, this will be ready to demo and probably we'll be looking for trial customers, but I'm probably stealing Thomas's thunder with that one. I'll just turn it back over to you for now, Thomas, so we can get on to the Q&A.
And one last thing that I wanted to mention is, look, again, because of the flexibility of the platform, we can meet you where you are. So for example, we can capture time saving based on surveys, but if your process is consistent enough, maybe we can capture it from your Jira or your PR directly if you use a certain kind of process. The point is not necessarily how we capture the data, but the framework. And as Matt said, look, understand what the potential energy is, figure out what left to their own devices your folks are doing and how they're moving the needle locally. And then, with this and essentially the rest of Faros, figure out how to harness that and transform your organization. So Naomi, I think I'll give it back to you now.
Yeah, thank you. If you could stop sharing. All right, well, thank you so much. Matt and Thomas. That was great. So as we transition to the Q&A portion of the webinar, I think that everyone in the attendance, including our presenters, would now be very curious to quickly poll you all about how you've been conducting your evaluations and which downstream impacts are top of mind for you. So let's start with the first question. We just spoke about the fact that different groups of people within the organization are going to optimize for different things, but knowing your organization, the people that you have top of mind, what do you think, what are the top of mind things that you would like to see improve? And this is multiple choice, so you can select a few. Velocity, doing things faster, doing more things in less time. Is it the quality? Is it onboarding people faster? We know that there's a lot of benefit to onboarding junior members. Modernizing, re-architecting, all the things we never have time for, or just the developer experience and satisfaction in their job, or it could be something completely different. In that case, choose other. So yeah, make your choices. Let's give it another few seconds. And Mahesh, when you see enough answers rolling in, we can share the results. All right. So we got 71% velocity. So yeah, we're all being asked to do more with less all the time. That's obvious. Quality and developer experience satisfaction are really top of mind for you all. So that's great. A little bit about onboarding. All right, if the person who chose other would like to put like what that other thing is in the Q&A box, we'd love to know what other thoughts y'all are having. Okay, so my next question for you, and this is the last one, is how are you currently reporting on Copilot's impact? If you are one of those folks who said that you were in the middle of an evaluation or have enabled your whole organization on it. So here, again, it's multiple choice. Are you doing like manual surveys, automated surveys? Have you just have your own like engineering data lake where you're looking at the answers? Do you have a CAN metrics tool that you've been looking at to see these things? Maybe you're not reporting at all. That also could be the case, or something else. So tell us a little bit about what you've been doing. And this will play nicely into the Q&A because some of your questions, I think, are relating to these things. All right, 5-second warning. All right. So let's see what your results are. Manual surveys, not reporting at all. Interesting, yeah. And then you have your own data lakes and sometimes CAN metrics tools. Great. I mean, if anybody wants to tell us more about what you're doing and what your experience with that has been, feel free to put it into the Q&A chat because our panelists are looking at that as well. So let's transition to that Q&A now. Thank you, Stephanie and Mark, for your questions. I hope that we answered your questions about which metrics to track to understand if it's a successful adoption and how to measure developer productivity. If you still have like specific questions that weren't answered, please ask them so I can relate them to Matt and Thomas. Matt, I have a question for you. It's a great question, came in from Dan. They're asking this is just the beginning, right, of GitHub Copilot and GitHub and AI. So to paraphrase the question a little bit, can you tell the audience about what else is planned for Copilot's roadmap and how might that make what we've talked about today more of a continuous evaluation that requires constant fine-tuning of that intentionality that you spoke about? Or is this a one-off exercise? A yes, no?
No, it's not a one-off. This is something that is actually, I see, going to become more and more routine and not, driven by this new technology just coming onto the scene. And that is, how we spend our time as developers and as an organization is getting pulled into a lot of different directions, right? And there's going to be more tools like Copilot. There's going to be more use cases of Copilot within the GitHub platform coming very soon. The list of things that you will be able to do with Copilot will be getting longer and longer. So with all of these new capabilities, kind of a stream, if you can imagine a stream of capabilities kind of flowing along. Which ones are right for you, right? Which ones are going to help you accomplish your intentional outcomes is going to be a very critical question that you're constantly going to have to be making adjustments to. And so that's where this type of dashboard, where you can constantly see, okay, how am I able to spend, which tools are giving me free time back, and how am I able to spend that free time effectively to drive the outcomes that I'm interested in, whether they're, simple velocity outcomes or quality or team health or other organizational initiatives. And so I hope that answered the question, Naomi. It's a little long-winded, maybe.
I think it did. I think it did. That's great. I have one more for you, Matt, and it's also relates to Thomas a little, so you can kind of tag team on this. But Joe asked a question. He said, besides giving, the cohort Copilot, are there any recommendations or directives, training, and resources that you give to the cohort to help them be successful using Copilot?
Yes, definitely. And this is something that we're learning as on the GitHub side, but I think across the industry, what skills are required to be proficient with Copilot? And so we're developing training. We have resources that we're providing customers to help them with that. But I think it's a moving target. So I would say, keep an eye out for more information in that area and more help, because these tools, while you can be very productive with very little training, a little bit of training can go a long way to maximizing the impact. So very, very important.
Yeah, and I would simply add, again, you can store those bits of information in Faros as well, like who did training and who didn't, right? Again, so ways to capture that, but like I would try to capture all that information, especially if you are responsible for a very large organization, so that you can make those decisions, those large-scale decisions, in a way that's backed with data.
Okay, great. And while you're on off mute, Thomas, Joe also wanted to know, when you were walking through the example about Faros, he was asking, how big is our team, what the primary tech stack is. I don't know, I guess trying to learn from our experience about how to project onto his own organization.
Yeah, look, our org is 50 and growing engineering org, very fast. Our tech stack is GitHub, BuildKite, Jira, PagerDuty. Yeah, I think that's
SonarQube.
Sorry, yes,
Yeah.
thank you. I was looking for the last one. And SonarQube.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that answers the question.
Perfect. All right. I have a question for you, Thomas, from Chris, which is, and maybe Matt, you could also jump in on this one. It's like, how should organizations determine which of the downstream impacts they should be targeting? How would they know what each sub-cohort should be optimizing for?
All right, that's a layered question, so let me take a stab at it. The role of leaders is to figure out what the organization should be doing, right? And it is a difficult job when you get over 200 engineers, because there is a point where you cannot just keep everything in your mind anymore, right? And so leaders to be able to do the job and help find the global optimum for the organization, what they need is data. And I'm very mindful here to not say metrics. I'm saying data, because metrics are static. What they need is they need a way to harness their expertise and intuition and essentially measure and back their major decisions with data. Engineering leaders don't have that; they're not making a lot of decisions, right? Good leaders delegate a lot, and a lot of the things are solved at a local level, I would say. but they have like 2-3 big decisions they take every year, mostly through prioritization. And they need to make sure that when they pull those levers, the outcome of that is tracked and positive, right? And so again, here, I would say the main advice I would give is make sure you have data that's, up to date, attributed, data that you can exploit. You have people specialized in optimizing engineering organization, making sure that, you have those people that can leverage that data. And then when it comes to, in this case, Copilot, I would say, ideally, if you want your team to figure out where they want to optimize, you need two things. You need data available to those teams as well, which is, an additional thing compared to just, having all of the data for you, the engineering leader. And then you need also to set bars, right? And you need to say, look, where we are as an organization, on average, teams should be here for quality, or here should be here for velocity. And what that is, like how that translates into metrics, that's very specific to you, we think. But it's important for you to set the bar so that the team can make those local prioritization in a way that makes sense globally.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that, there's a couple of different angles. One that I wanted to mention earlier, and it applies here, is that velocity, for example, is a very common way to want to improve the development process. I think everyone's read Accelerate and so forth, but velocity, if you do the math, is a very weak signal for the impact that Copilot can have. So looking at velocity is going to give you a lot of blind spots for the value that Copilot is bringing. So highly recommend looking at other things besides velocity, like time saved. The other thing is that encourage developers and teams to have an ability and optionality to solve problems on their own, because not everything can come from leaders, right? And leaders don't have visibility to things in the front lines. So those are two little things I would add to that.
And interestingly, Matt, we see that, and sorry, I hope we're not over time, but we see that being done at a lot of our customers, where the data is being given to the various teams thanks to role-based access control, right? So people can not just see metrics, but they can actually go into the data and explore their data. And then, so that's going down, I would say. But then engineering leaders are also making that data available to their peers. So we have customers that take all that engineering data and put it next to product data and business outcomes data, so they can correlate those things as well.
Awesome. Okay. I want to ask one more question to Thomas, just to close the loop with Joe. He wanted to know, when you did your initial cohort analysis, did you give was there any like official training or resources given to the cohort, or did they just start using it?
Just started using it.
Okay.
And we're a startup, we move fast. Like we let people figure out what they need to do at this stage of our company.
Awesome. Okay. Okay. So I think with that, we're gonna wrap up. There's one question for you, Matt. You might want to take a look from Jagan. Maybe you'll understand the question. I'm not sure how to translate it for the rest of the audience. So I would like to summarize by first thanking our presenters, Thomas and Matt, for a wonderful job. And, as we wrap up, like, here's what you can do next. So first of all, you kindly have the email addresses and GitHub handles of Matt and Thomas if you want to continue the conversation. There are also a couple more things you can do. One is to schedule your personalized demo of Faros, so we can help you with whatever your AI transformation, engineering, productivity, and developer experience initiatives are to achieve and get visibility into those impacts that you're looking for. And you can come visit the GitHub booth at GitHub Universe, which is taking place in San Francisco, November 8th and 9th. We'll be there with Matt, and we look forward to talking to you there. And so thank you so much for your attendance. And we're going to end the webinar now. Have a great rest of your day, and goodbye from all of us.